Deep into the evening, December 7th, 2023, the Game Awards unveiled its last trailer of the night. We as a community saw a beautiful panorama unfold before us, a harbinger of what the brief 90 seconds that followed would bring. And together, we experienced a journey of rich endemic life, heavy weather patterns, stunning detail to the landscape, and a cool mount to navigate such a vast open world. But that moment, that last moment, where we hit the final camera pan and a perfectly framed rock face on the horizon, a logo unfurled. The trumpets come in, and the Monster Hunter logo splashes into view. Now, if you're like me and my wife, there was much shouting and rejoicing that night, and we all got to share in that moment together. This might sound a bit like a love letter, and in a small way, it is. Capcom did so much for my childhood, most notably in the Mega Man, Street Fighter, Darkstalkers, Ace Attorney, and more recently Monster Hunter series. For many others, there was Devil May Cry, Dino Crisis, Beautiful Joe, Okami, and of course Resident Evil, and more. Capcom's thumbprint on our childhood memories is indisputable. And for my first foray into Monster Hunter, I dabbled a bit back in the PSP era with Monster Hunter Portable 3rd. If I say the claw, and instantly your hand cramps up, congratulations, you probably played Freedom Unite. I'd also dipped my toes into Try, and even bought that stupid thumbstick dock for my 3DS when Monster Hunter 4 released. Literally none of them stuck. My friends around me loved the game, and yet I just couldn't get over the clunky controls and methodical combat. Never mind the fact that I thought playing a PSP game in Japanese would be a good idea because I wanted to brush up on my Japanese, and why do all the icons look the same? Look, it was clearly a love-hate relationship, and I would like to formally apologize for all the vile words that came out of my mouth while playing Monster Hunter. It was a dark time in my life, okay? Flash forward to 2018. At the time, I had just gotten my Twitch channel off the ground and was hard at work building community. I've since retired from Twitch, but one of my community admins picked up World at its midnight release and literally streamed it all night long. By the way, he also fell asleep during that stream, but don't tell him I told you. But let me tell you, what I saw had me shook. Before me, there was a rich and vibrant world, lush flora and fauna that felt alive, powerful lighting effects, and monsters that were quite literally larger than life. In that moment, I knew that if I got back into Monster Hunter, it would be with World. And it's that self-same sense of wonder, anticipation, and excitement that has me so captivated by Wilds and what it could be. We only have a trailer, an interview, and a TGA announcement to go off of, leaving the community to try to fill the gaps in the meanwhile. So while I've been doing these videos combing through as much of Wild's trailers as I can, I got to experience the best part of theory crafting. All of you. Suddenly, I was surrounded by like-minded people, caught up in the deluge of conversations about the nice-to-haves, the I-wants, and the how-cools would this be. So maybe this video is less a love letter to Capcom and more like a Christmas list. And Santa Capcom, I better be on your nice list because today I am covering the definitive, totally unbiased, actually accurate opinion to have wish list for Monster Hunter Wilds. So I'm gonna approach this in 3 different segments, starting with the probably gonna get it, moving to the might get it, and then working my way down to the probably not gonna get it, but still really want it. Kicking off our list is something I am confident Capcom is going to deliver: an open world. The trailer, the environment, the storms, the symbolism in the logo, the herds of large and lesser monsters, the expansive terrain. Can we just call this a given? Come on, Capcom, just drop the announcement already. I can't fathom how Capcom would drop a bombshell of a trailer like Wilds and then not follow through on what the whole community is talking about. Imagine vast open lands with near infinite potential to explore, thriving endemic life, plenty of materials to craft with, and monsters lying in wait to ambush you. Capcom knows the community is hungry for a fully open world. Underwater combat. I touched on this in my last video, how a return of underwater combat would set Capcom up for success, especially if we factor in the learning experiences from World's development process. It's a natural evolution of the game's mechanics and a very intuitive step for Capcom to take. I mean, they've done it before, and if there aren't any highly problematic rigging issues, it's something Wilds is poised to bring to the table with the vast swaths of open land. Now, I do acknowledge that some aren't convinced. My argument for underwater combat comes from drawing conclusions about the symbolism and patterns of the Monster Hunter series and what Wild's logo represents. Specifically, I want to recognize the counterpoints against underwater combat, like how the water effect in the logo could be a mirage, or instead, raindrops in line with the heavy weather patterns Wild presents. I hear you, and by all means those are valid points for sure, but I'm still of the mind that it would be very on brand for Capcom to reprise underwater combat in a new game that has big shoes to fill. World knocked it out of the park, and if Capcom's going to trump that success, they've got to bring everything they've got to the table and more. Skills and decorations. The skill and decoration system in World added a whole host of well-needed depth and customization to the armor system in the Monster Hunter franchise. Certainly, there were resistances and weapon skills in earlier entries, but World really took the idea of granular customization and ran with it. Gone were the days of being locked into a particular armor type for a specific role or weapon when you could just gem in additional skills and buffs with the face stones. This alone added so much depth and creativity to a hunter's build, giving players control over key facets of their skills and providing a near infinite level of customization to their kit. Players to this day are still coming up with clever combinations and new ways to meta against particular monsters, with decorations being the only differentiating factor. The sort of agency afforded by the skill and decoration system is sure to make a comeback, or at least reprise its role with an evolution and expansion on these mechanics. New monsters. Look, every Monster Hunter game has introduced a new monster or two. Even though we only have a trailer and an interview to work from, Wilds is going to be more than just a pretty landscape and heavy weather. World introduced a tidy handful of new monsters, and Wilds is certain to do the same. If we end up with Wilds DLC, we can expect even more monsters to join the existing cast, especially ones that highlight the evolution the gameplay mechanics will see. I'll circle back to this point in a moment. Game engine. And last in our probably gonna get it list, I want to shout out SR Baron for bringing this one to my attention. Capcom R&D has been hard at work developing and improving their RE engine for nearly 10 years. If you've played Resident Evil 4 Remake on PS5, you know exactly what I'm talking about. What a visual spectacle that game is. The more they improve on this engine, the more polish and optimization on the final product we'll see. The next set of updates coming out can then be retroactively applied to any game developed in the RE engine, which is an absolute Chad move from Capcom, guaranteeing the longevity of their library as the games age. Okay, so what does this have to do with Wilds? Over the course of the engine's lifespan, more and more games are being brought into the fold, where it's not just the Resident Evil games that get to enjoy these improvements. In fact, one entry in the Monster Hunter franchise is already built off the RE engine: Monster Hunter Rise. If Monster Hunter Wilds is being built in the RE engine, that would mean the Rex updates will apply to the game as improvements release. This alone would single-handedly squash any and all doubts I had about Wild's release timeline and the concerns I voiced in a prior video about the game being limited by aging hardware from the PS5 and Xbox Series X. The RE engine would afford Capcom a modular framework to build off of, where improvements and optimizations could be readily streamlined to the engine driving Wilds, irrespective of the hardware you're playing it on. In other words, we all win. Whether you're on PlayStation, Xbox, or PC, the codebase is unified, easing the development overhead for updates to the code underpinning the game. When new hardware and new technologies arise, Capcom tailors the RE engine and pushes out an update to it that takes advantage of that hardware and technology. This is the gamer equivalent of Capcom literally slapping it down like a dig-bic in a locker room. Never been that guy, but you can bet everybody notices when he walks in. Moving on, we have the might get it category. This is where I feel a lot of hints point to their appearance in Wilds, but not fully confirmed or set in stone yet. Seasonal patterns. The heavy weather patterns were one of the most eye-catching parts of the Wilds trailer. In mere moments, a billowing sand cloud swept over the landscape, leaving the wildlife literally tripping over each other to safety. Despite their efforts, they found themselves caught in the lightning storm that would follow. But if Wild's open world takes shape in the form of a single, contiguous map, seasonal patterns could easily account for spring, summer, fall, and winter without having to segment the map for weather that the biomes were historically dedicated to. That right there would allow Capcom to account for the forest, wildspire, and tundra biomes in Wilds with nothing more than the passage of time. Add in the rainy season that's common among savanna and desert geographies, and we can make a case for a tropical water biome as well. This is further emphasized by the color gradients in the Monster Hunter Wilds logo. Oh no, Jade, not the logo again. Stop obsessing over the logo. In case it weren't already obvious, we have very little material on Wilds to draw from at the moment, so let me make it abundantly clear. I'm not interested in magnifying trifling details just to make content and then slapping some clickbait thumbnail on the video for views. These videos take a lot of work, but in my prior video I discussed the patterns in Capcom's teasers, logos, and artistic presentation that can then help educate our guesses and inform us of what to expect. The water droplets in the logo heavily suggest rain, for instance. The color gradient in the emblem, fading from orange to yellow to blue to teal, they all suggest the changing of seasons and the change in weather that they bring. But I do acknowledge that these patterns I've described could just be a re-emphasis on the different heavy weather patterns we're already aware of. Or it's possible it's simply a reflection of the dedicated biomes already common to the Monster Hunter ecosystem and not necessarily weather patterns a seamless map would experience. Still, if the open world manifests as a contiguous map with weather and seasons and lunar cycles, this would usher in a new era for Monster Hunter's ecological flair in a way that fans have never been able to experience before. Imagine certain monsters, flora and fauna that would only appear during a certain time of year in game. It would be ambitious to be certain, but a big fat juicy W for both Capcom and Monster Hunter devotees alike. New elements. With 6 dragons represented in the emblem and a lot of discussion surrounding its meaning, I postulated that there might be 1 dragon per element. To accomplish this, Capcom would have to bring in a new 6th element to the mainline series of the game. Given that Earth already exists as an element in the Monster Hunter universe in Monster Hunter Explorer, I'm imagining that's the direction Capcom might go. But what completely threw me was how many of you were calling for the element of wind. Given the number of times awesome monsters have utilized wind, not you, in the Monster Hunter franchise, even so far as to add wind resistance as a skill to gem into your builds with decorations, I'm honestly surprised I didn't think of this myself. But what you're gonna hear next is going to blow your mind, and I never expected Capcom to confirm the 6th element so soon. That's right, you heard it here first. Capcom is officially introducing a 6th element to the franchise. The element of surprise. I'm so sorry, Soldier Reed. I just had to do it. We'll need to wait for Capcom to confirm any new elements, but whether it's earth or wind, what I don't want to see are combination elements, where some fictional element is made up of different ratios of 2 or more of the standalone elements. So far, I think we've got a pretty good chance of a new element and a standalone element at that being added to the lineup. The Clutch Claw. Love it or hate it, the Clutch Claw is a prominent fixture on Iceborne's design and combat mechanics. In my prior video, I discussed how powerful a utility this is in the Hunter's Toolkit, and went on to mention how some fans were glad to see its departure and rise. One of the biggest criticisms I've seen is that it's just too powerful, diluting some of the more strategic and methodical elements that have comprised Monster Hunter's combat. Regardless of which camp you fall into on the whole Clutch Claw debate, I have to admit, the Clutch Claw is a big yes for me. Despite the presence of the Slinger, however, the Claw itself was absent from the trailer. Perhaps Capcom is going to repeat Iceborne and add it into the Wilds DLC, or perhaps they may have different mechanics intended for the game that make the claw redundant and obsolete. I'd say it could be 50-50 on this one, but as a flint shot connoisseur, I'm really hoping to see its return in Wilds. Cross-platform multiplayer. Now, this is one that I don't think is talked about enough. The Monster Hunter community is a dedicated and loyal fan base. We bring the life and spirit of the Monster Hunter franchise to life with our videos, comments, community-driven online resources, and especially our cooperation. As a fellow part of the Monster Hunter community, I have never seen a group of people in the online space so passionate and devoted, yet so open to discussion and thoughtful in their comments and ideas for what Wilds can be. Here we are, together, in this moment, sharing in something truly special as we anticipate Wilds' release. When an SOS flare goes out, someone's bound to pick it up. When someone's trying to get plugged into the community, there are discords and websites and communities just waiting for them with open arms. Monster Hunter fans are a cut above the rest when it comes to how deeply and passionately we want to embark on our adventures with fellow adventurers like us. Yet the sad reality is we're isolated to our own camps by arbitrary hardware restrictions. We shouldn't have to feel limited by our platform choices when it comes to integrating with the selfsame community we're passionate about. And though we didn't see cross-platform in World, Capcom wasn't anticipating the overwhelming success that World was. It is the best-selling Monster Hunter game in the franchise and still going strong to this day. By the time Wild's releases, it will have been 7 years since Monster Hunter World, and Capcom is bringing so much experience and growth into Wild's development. In a prior video, I mentioned how Capcom has set themselves up for success and are poised to hit a platform-agnostic simultaneous release in 2025. Failing to tear down the walls of platform preference and unite the disparate camps of the community under the Monster Hunter Wilds release would, in my opinion, be a massive L for Capcom. An ancient civilization. Back to the thought on new monsters. So I've already discussed the themes of why I think we'll see some sort of ancient civilization in Wilds, and I absolutely think there's so much potential in exploring these themes. The spires in the savannah as man-made lightning poles, the helical rock face at the horizon at the end of the trailer, or the parallels between the designs and the iconography in Wild's logo. For all intents and purposes, I feel that this is a theme Capcom intends to delve into more deeply. With the end of an entire society's technology and way of life, there would have been a cataclysmic foe that spelled their demise. Easy premise for a new Elder Dragon right there. Still, Capcom could completely come out of left field and go an entirely different direction with this. I think more than anything, I'm just curious what the explanation will be for the prominent landmarks in Wild's trailer, and I'm hungry to know more. And last, onto our third and final category. We're probably not going to get it, but still really want it anyway. It would be nice, but won't be a deal breaker for me if they're not included. A new weapon or two? So I'd love to see something new and fresh added to the lineup of weapons in Monster Hunter. World had 14, and certainly that was a wide variety to choose from. Don't get me wrong, I'm a glaive enthusiast through and through. Something about spinning combos and aerial acrobatics just speaks to me. But the reality is, I think it's far more likely that Capcom's busy adapting current weapons and combat for the open world environment. Furthermore, they'll have their hands full if they're going to make a return of underwater combat. Bringing the underwater experience in line with the aggressive pace of current land-based combat will be no small task. More realistically, I feel it's likely Capcom will adjust the current set of weapons and tweak their mechanics. If it comes down to refining existing themes, mechanics, and combat, or introducing something new, I'm not worried that Capcom is afraid of change or innovation, but I'd rather that they dedicate their time to a refined polish on the product they deliver. The return of old or spin-off weapons. As a diehard glaive main, I would be gutted to have to force myself to learn a different weapon in Monster Hunter. Don't get me wrong, I've dabbled in hunting horn, charge blade, bow, and longsword, but a massive part of Monster Hunter is, well, the hunt. I mean, it's in the name. There's no two minds about whether or not combat plays an integral role in the experience. To lose my preferred weapon would negatively impact my enjoyment of the game. In that vein, I feel sympathetic to my fellow hunters who felt a bit displaced by the absence of tonfas, mag spikes, or axle axes, and I would really like to see a return of these weapons not just for the hunters who relied on them in combat, but also to further widen the combat options for other hunters who've yet to try their hands at them. Like in my prior point, however, I believe it's far more likely that Capcom's going to be focused on adapting the current lineup of weapons for combat in the open world and integrating any new or changed mechanics into the formula. But what about you? I want to hear your wish list. What are some of the things you want to see come back? Or what new things do you hope to have in Wilds? And what things would you like, but you're like, yeah, chances are slim, probably not going to happen. There's still a lot of road left to travel before we hear something more, but I absolutely love the comments and getting to interact with fans of Monster Hunter theorizing over something we're mutually passionate about. So, until the next video, I'm Jade, and there's no getting off of this train until Monster Hunter Wilds releases. If there's something you'd like me to cover or topics you want me to discuss, let me know. I'd love to make a video based on viewer requests. Until then, I'll see you in the comments below.